We're back with the uploaded part of part 2. This is actually the first segment of Shabbat service for Waymaker Messianic Jewish and Christian Center USA. It is Saturday, July 3rd, 2021 on the Hebrew calendar, and it is Tammuz 235781 on the Hebrew calendar. We're going to continue on with the Torah portion, and this is Parashat Pinchas or Phinehas, and we are at chapter 28, when we're talking about the Moedim, the appointed times, and we'll be talking about this very shortly when we're coming onto the eve of of a new Hebrew month, which is also a new moon. Um, so we're going to start here with chapter 28, Moedim, appointed times. Ananias spoke to Moses, saying, "Command Bnei Israel and tell them to be careful to present to me at the Moedim my food offerings by fire as a pleasing aroma. Tell them, this is the fire offering which you are to present to Adonai: 2 male lambs, a year old, without flaw, as a daily regular burnt offering. Prepare 1 lamb in the morning, and the other lamb you are to prepare at twilight, along with a tenth of an ephah of fine flour for grain offering, mixed with a fourth of a hin of oil from pressed olives. This is the regular burnt offering initiated at Mount Sinai as a pleasing aroma of fire offering to Adonai. With each lamb pour out a fourth of a hin of fermented drink at the sanctuary as a drink offering to Adonai. Prepare the second lamb at twilight with the same type of grain and drink offerings. Be prepared in the morning a fire offering as a pleasing aroma to Adonai. Shabbat, weekly rest. On the Shabbat, you are to present 2 flawless male lambs, a year old, along with 2/10 of an ephah of fine flour as a grain offering mixed with oil and its drink offering. This is the burnt offering for every Shabbat, besides the regular burnt offering and its drink offering. Rosh Chodesh, and we are going to be celebrating very shortly Rosh Chodesh. The month of Av is the next month. On the first of the month you are to present to Adonai a burnt offering of 2 young bulls, 1 ram, and 7 flawless male lambs, a year old, with 3/10 of an ephah of fine flour mixed with oil, as a grain offering, with each bull, and 2/10 of an ephah of fine flour mixed with oil, as a grain offering with the ram, and with each lamb 1/10 of an ephah of fine flour mixed with oil, for a grain offering, a burnt offering as a pleasing aroma, an offering by fire to Adonai. Their drink offering shall be per bull half a hin of wine, a third of a hin of wine per ram, and a fourth of a hin per lamb. This will be the monthly burnt offering at each new moon throughout the year. Also 1 male goat as a sin offering to Adonai, beside the regular burnt offering is to be offered with its drink offering. Pesach, Passover. On the 14th day of the first month is Adonai's Passover. On the 15th day there is to be a feast. For 7 days matzah will be eaten. You are to hold a sacred assembly. On the first day you are not to do any laborious work. You are to offer to Adonai burnt offering by fire: 2 young bulls, 1 ram, and 7 male lambs, a year old. They are to be flawless. You are to offer their grain offering of fine flour mixed with oil, 3/10 of an ephah per bull, 2/10 per ram, and 1/10 per each of the 7 lambs, plus 1 goat for a sin offering to atone for yourselves. In addition to the morning burnt offering and regular burnt offering, you are to offer these. Just like this, you are to offer each day for 7 days the food to be offered by fire for each day as a pleasing aroma to Adonai, beside the regular burnt offering with its drink offering. On the seventh day you are to have a sacred assembly, and you are to do no laborious work. Shabbat, Feast of Weeks. On the day of first fruits, when you offer to Adonai a new grain offering during the Feast of Weeks, you are to have a sacred assembly. You are to do no laborious work. You are to offer as a pleasing aroma a burnt offering to Adonai 2 young bulls from the herd, 1 ram, and 7 male lambs, a year old. With each bull there is to be a grain offering of 3/10 of an ephah of fine flour mixed with oil, with a ram 2/10, and with each lamb 1/10, plus 1 male goat to make atonement for you. In addition, you are to prepare the regular burnt offering with its grain offering and its drink offering. They are to be without defect. Chapter 29, this continues. These are the fall feasts. So we just went over actually um, Rosh Chodesh, the new moon, the Shabbat, and the spring feasts. These are Moedim appointed times in chapter 28. Now, these are also appointed times, and these are the fall feast. Yom Teruah, the day of shofar shouts. On the first day of the seventh month, you are to have a sacred assembly. You are to do no laborious work. It is for you a day for sounding the shofar. You are to prepare a burnt offering as a pleasing aroma to Adonai, one young bull from the herd, one ram, and 7 male lambs, a year old without flaw, with their grain offering of fine flour mixed with oil, 3/10 of an ephah with the bull, 2/10 with a ram, and 1/10 with each of the 7 lambs, as well as 1 male goat as a sin offering to make atonement for yourselves. Also offer the burnt offering for the month with its grain offering, the regular burnt offering with its grain offering, and their appropriate drink offerings as a pleasing aroma to Adonai as an offering by fire. Yom Kippur, or the Day of Atonement, on the 10th day of this seventh month, you are to have a sacred assembly. You are to deny yourselves and do no work. You are to present to Adonai a burnt offering as a pleasing aroma, one young bull, from the herd, one ram, and 7-year-old male lambs without defect, along with their grain offerings of fine flour, mixed with oil, 3/10 of an ephah, with the bull, 2/10 with a ram, and 1/10 with each of the 7 lambs. Also offer 1 male goat for a sin offering, in addition to the sin offering for atonement, as well as the regular burnt offering with its grain offering and their drink offerings. Sukkot, Feast of Tabernacles. On the 15th day of the seventh month, you are to have a sacred assembly. You are not to do any of your work, and you are to celebrate the feast to Adonai for 7 days. You are to offer a burnt offering by fire to Adonai as a pleasing aroma, 13 young bulls from the herd, 2 rams, and 14-year-old male lambs without defect. Their grain offerings of fine flour mixed with oil, 3/10 of an ephah with each of the 13 bulls, 2/10 with each of the 2 rams, and 1/10 with each of the 14 lambs, plus 1 male goat as a sin offering, besides this regular burnt offering with its grain and drink offerings. On the second day, you are to offer 12 young bulls from the herd, 2 rams, and 14-year-old male lambs. So it's not 14-year-olds; it's 14 one-year-old male lambs. I just wanted to clarify that because that was on the first day. This is the same on the second day. The 14 one-year-old male lambs without flaw, with their grain and drink offerings, with the bulls, rams, and the lambs as appropriate by their number according to the regulations, plus 1 male goat as a sin offering, as well as the regular burnt offering with its grain and drink offering. On the third day, offer 11 bulls, 2 rams, and 14-year-old male lambs without defect, with their grain and drink offerings, with the bulls, rams, and lambs the number specified, and a male goat as a sin offering, in addition to the regular burnt offering with its grain and drink offerings. On the fourth day, 10 bulls, 2 rams, and 14 one-year-old male lambs without flaw, their grain offerings and drink offerings, with the bulls, rams, and lambs by their number according to the regulations, and 1 male goat as a sin offering, and the regular burnt offering with its grain and drink offerings. On the fifth day, 9 bulls, 2 rams, and 14 male one-year-old lambs without defect, with their grain and drink offerings by their number as specified, and 1 goat for sin offering, in addition to the regular burnt offering with its grain and drink offerings. On the sixth day, 8 bulls, 2 rams, and 14 male lambs a year old without defect, with the bulls, rams, and lambs, their grain and drink offerings according to those numbers specified, and 1 goat for sin offering, with the regular burnt offering and its grain and drink offerings. On the seventh day, 7 bulls, 2 rams, and 14 male lambs without defect, a year old, plus their grain and drink offerings for the bulls, rams, and lambs according to the numbers specified, in addition to 1 male goat for a sin offering, and the regular burnt offering with its grain and drink offerings. On the 8th day, there shall be for you an assembly. You are to do no regular work. You are to offer to Adonai a burnt offering, a fire offering, a pleasing aroma, 1 bull, 1 ram, and 7 male lambs a year old without defect, and their grain and drink offerings with the bull, ram, and lamb corresponding to their number according to the regulations, and a goat for sin offering besides the regular burnt offering with its grain and drink offerings. You are to prepare these for Adonai at your Moedim in addition to your vow and freewill offerings, along with your burnt offerings, grain offerings, drink offering, and fellowship offerings. So Moses told Bnei Israel all that Adonai commanded Moses. And chapter 30, keeping or nullifying vows, and we're just going to end this with the first verse. Moses spoke to the princes of the tribes of Bnei Israel, saying, "This is what Adonai has commanded." And that's like a cliffhanger here, because that will be next week's Parashat Matot. We are actually going to have two parashats in the Torah portions next week, Matot and Masai. That will be Matot and Masei. So that is the end of the Torah portion for this week. So just to recap the Torah portion, we picked off after the aftermath of the plague, and Phinehas is blessed by God for his actions, and a new census of the people is taken. The brotherless daughters of Zelophehad appeal to Moses for sharing the land of Israel, and God sets the laws of inheritance. Um, he designates that, and God shows Moses the promised land, which he will never enter, and appoints Joshua as his successor. And then this portion ends with the appointed Moedim of Adonai. So again, as we see, the census is taken, and they are numbered by the tribes too. And then the story of the daughters of Zelophehad, actually they stood before Moses and said, our father died of his own sin. He wasn't in rebellion with Korah, but why should his name be blotted out from among Bnei Israel? And Moses took it to Adonai, and Adonai said they spoke right, and gave further instructions on inheritance when there are no sons, and then when there were no daughters, and he went on to describe what needed to happen as far as inheritance with Bnei Israel. A successor for Moses was named, and that was Joshua. And Moses was told in this Torah portion that he could see the land that Adonai was about to give to Bnei Israel, but he was not going to enter it, that he would be called, he was going to gather him to his fathers, meaning he was going to die. And Joshua was appointed the next leader, and he was to lay pass that mantle over to him in front of the people, lay his hands on him, and it was the transfer of authority there. And that was what Adonai's wish was. So he was passing on his leadership role. And then again, like the seven commanded feasts of God were addressed, along with new moons, the Rosh Chodesh, and also Shabbat was also addressed. Um, so, and there were specific things that needed to happen at each of the appointed Moedim. So we're going to move on now with the Haftorah. What was suggested for the Haftorah was 1 Kings 18, verse 46 to 19, verse 21 for the first reading. And I'm actually going to take 1 Kings from the beginning of the chapter of 18 and read it in its full context, and read all of chapter 19 as well. And then we'll go on to the second reading of the Haftorah. Elijah confronts Ahab. Now it was after many days that the word of Adonai came to Elijah in the third year, saying, "Go show yourself to Ahab, then I will send rain on the land." So Elijah went to show himself to Ahab. Now the famine was very severe in Samaria. Ahab summoned Obadiah, who was the steward of the palace. Now Obadiah feared Adonai greatly, for when Jezebel was cutting off the prophets of Adonai, Obadiah took 100 prophets, hid them 50 to a cave, and provided them with bread and water. Then Ahab said to Obadiah, "Go through the land to all the springs of water and to all the wadis. Perhaps we may find grass, and to keep the horses and mules alive, and not lose all the animals." So they divided the land between them to explore it. Ahab went one way by himself, while Obadiah went another way by himself. As Obadiah was on the road, all of a sudden Elijah met him. When he recognized him, he fell on his face and said, "Is it you, my lord Elijah?" "It is I," he answered him. "Go tell your lord, look, Elijah is here." "How have I sinned?" he replied, "that you are giving your servant into the hand of Ahab to put me to death? As Adonai your God lives, there is no nation or kingdom where my master has not sent to search for you." And when they said, "He is not here," he made that kingdom or nation swear that they could not find you. Now you're saying, "Go tell your Lord, look, Elijah is here." But as soon as I leave you, the Ruach Adonai may carry you off where I wouldn't know. Then when I come and tell Ahab and he can't find you, he'll kill me. Now I, your servant, have feared Adonai since my youth. Wasn't my Lord told what I did when Jezebel slaughtered the prophets of Adonai, how I hid 100 of Adonai's prophets, 50 to a cave, and provided them with bread and water? So now you say, "Go tell your Lord, look, Elijah is here." He'll kill me. Then Elijah said, "As Adonai Sabaoth lives, before whom I stand, I will surely show myself to him today." So Obadiah went to meet Ahab and told him. Then Ahab went to meet Elijah. Now when Ahab saw Elijah, Ahab said to him, "Is it you, the one who causes trouble for Israel?" But he answered, "I have not troubled Israel. Rather, it is you and your father's house, by breaking the mitzvot of Adonai and going after the Baalim. Now then send and gather for me all Israel at Mount Carmel, together with the 450 prophets of Baal and the 400 prophets of Asherah who eat at Jezebel's table. Triumph on Mount Carmel." So Ahab sent word to all the children of Israel and gathered the prophets together at Mount Carmel. Then Elijah approached all the people and said, "How long will you waver between two opinions? If Adonai is God, follow him. But if Baal is, follow him." But the people did not answer, not even a word. Then Elijah said to the people, "I am the only prophet of Adonai left, but Baal's prophets are 450 men. Now let them give us 2 young bulls. Let them choose one bull for themselves, cut it into pieces, lay it on the wood, and put no fire underneath, while I prepare the other bull. Lay it on the wood, and put no fire underneath. Then you will call on the name of your God, and then I will call on the name of Adonai, the God who answers with fire. He is God." All the people responded and said, "It is a good thing." Then Elijah said to the prophets of Baal, "Choose one bull for yourselves and prepare it first, since you are so many. Then call on the name of your God, but put no fire underneath." So they took the bull that he gave them, prepared it, and called on the name of Baal from morning till noon, crying, "Oh, Baal, answer us." But there was no voice. No one was answering. They also danced, leaping around the altar that was made. Now when it was about noon, Elijah mocked them and said, "Shout louder. After all, he is God. Maybe he's deep in thought, or he's relieving himself, or he's off on a journey, or perhaps he's asleep and must wake up." So they shouted even louder and cut themselves with swords and spears, as was their custom, until the blood gushed over them. When midday was past, they kept prophesying ecstatically until the time of offering up the evening sacrifice. But there was no voice, no one answering, no one paying attention. Then Elijah said to all the people, "Come near to me." So all the people came closer to him. Then he repaired the damaged altar of Adonai. Elijah took 12 stones, like the number of the tribes of the sons of Jacob, to whom the word of Adonai had come, saying, "Israel shall be your name." And with the stones he built an altar in the name of Adonai. Then he made a trench around the altar, large enough to contain 2 measures of seed. Then he put the wood in order, cut the bull in pieces, and laid it on the wood. Then he said, "Fill 4 jars with water, and pour it on the burnt offering and on the wood." Then he said a second time, and then they did it a second time. Then he said a third time, and they did it a third time. So the water ran around the altar, and he also filled the trench with water. Now it was at the time of offering up the evening sacrifice that Elijah the prophet came near and said, Adonai, God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, let it be known today that you are God in Israel, that I am your servant, and that I have done all these things at your word. Answer me, Adonai, answer me, so that these people may know that you, Adonai, are God, and that you have turned their heart back again. Then the fire of Adonai fell and consumed the burnt offering, and the wood, the stones, and the dust, and licked up the water that was in the trench. When all the people saw it, they fell on their faces, and they said, Adonai, he is God. Adonai, he is God. Then Elijah said to them, Seize the prophets of Baal. Let not a single one of them escape. So they seized them, and Elijah brought them down to the Wadi Kishon and slew them there. Then Elijah said to Ahab, Go up, eat and drink, for there is the sound of rain. So Ahab went up to eat and drink. But Elijah went up to the top of Carmel, crouched on the ground, and put his face between his knees. Then he said to his servant, Go up now, look toward the sea. So he went up, looked, and said, There's nothing. Then he said, Go back 7 times. And it was the 7th time that he said, Look, a cloud as small as a man's hand is rising from the sea. Then he said, Go up, say to Ahab, Harness your chariot and go down before the rain stops you. In a little while the sky grew black with clouds and wind, and there was a heavy rain. Ahab mounted and rode and headed to Jezreel. Now the hand of Adonai was on Elijah, so he girded up his loins and outran Ahab to the entrance of Jezreel. Chapter 19. Whisper at the cave. Then Ahab told Jezebel all that Elijah had done, and how he had slain all the prophets with the sword. Then Jezebel sent a messenger to Elijah, saying, So let the gods do to me, and worse, if by this time tomorrow I don't make your life like the life of one of them. Frightened, he got up and ran for his life. When he came to Beersheba, which belongs to Judah, he left his servant there. But he himself went a day's journey into the wilderness and came and sat down under a broom bush. He prayed that he might die. It's too much, he said. Now Adonai, take my life, for I'm no better than my father's. There he lay down and slept under the broom bush. Then behold, an angel touched him and said to him, Get up and eat. So he looked, and to his surprise, there by his head was a cake baked on the hot stone and a jar of water. So he ate and drank and lay down again. Then the angel of Adonai came again a second time, touched him, and said, Get up and eat, because the journey is too much for you. So he arose and ate and drank, and in the strength of that meal 40 days and 40 nights went to Horeb, the mountain of God. When he arrived there at the cave, he spent the night there. Then behold, the word of Adonai came to him, and he said to him, What are you doing here, Elijah? I have been very zealous for Adonai's Sabaoth, he said, for the children of Israel have forsaken your covenant, torn down your altars, and slain your prophets with a sword, and I alone am left, and they are seeking my life to take it. Then he said, Come out and stand on the mount before Adonai. Behold, Adonai was passing by. A great and mighty wind was tearing at the mountains and shattering cliffs before Adonai. But Adonai was not in the wind. After the wind there was an earthquake, but Adonai was not in the earthquake. After the earthquake a fire, but Adonai was not in the fire. After the fire there was a soft whisper of a voice. As soon as Elijah heard it, he wrapped his face in his mantle, went out, and stood at the entrance of the cave. Then all of a sudden a voice addressed him and said, What are you doing here, Elijah? I have been very zealous for Adonai Sabaoth, he said, for the children of Israel have forsaken your covenant, torn down your altars, and slain your prophets with a sword, and I alone am left, and they are seeking to take my life. Then Adonai said to him, Go, return on your way to the wilderness of Damascus, and when you get there, anoint Hazael king over Aram, and anoint Jehu son of Nimshi king over Israel, and anoint Elisha son of Shaphat of Abel Maholah a prophet as prophet in your place. It shall come to pass that whoever escapes from the sword of Hazael, Jehu will slay, and whoever escapes from the sword of Jehu, Elisha will slay. Yet I have preserved 7,000 in Israel whose knees have not bowed to Baal, and whose mouth has not kissed him. So there was 7,000 remnant that were saved. So Elijah was not the only one left. The calling of Elisha. So he departed from there and found Elisha son of Shaphat, while he was plowing with 12 pairs of oxen before him, and he was the 12th. Then Elijah crossed over to him and threw his mantle on him. So he left the oxen and ran after Elijah, saying, "Let me please kiss my father and my mother, and then I will follow you." "Come back," he said to him, "for what have I done to you?" So he returned from following him, and took the pair of oxen, and sacrificed them, and boiled their flesh with the oxen's yoke gear, and gave it to the people, and they ate. Then he arose, went after Elijah, and became his attendant. And that's the end of the first segment. And the second half Torah reading is Jeremiah, chapter 1, verse 1 to chapter 2, verse 3. The call of Jeremiah. The words of Jeremiah, son of Hilkiah, one of the Kohanim who were in Anathoth in the land of Benjamin. The word of Adonai came to him during the days of King Josiah of Judah, son of Ammon, in the 13th year of his reign. It continued during the days of King Jehoiakim of Judah, son of Josiah, until the end of the 11th year of King Zedekiah of Judah, son of Josiah, until the exile from Jerusalem in the 5th month. The word of Adonai came to me, saying, Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you, and before you were born, I set you apart. I appointed you prophet to the nations. Then I said, Alas, Adonai Elohim, look, I don't know how to speak, for I am still a boy. For Adonai answered me, Do not say I'm only a boy, for to everyone I send you, you will go, and all I can command you, you will speak. Do not be afraid of them, for I am with you to deliver you. It is a declaration of Adonai. Then Adonai stretched out his hand and touched my mouth, and Adonai said to me, Behold, I have put my words in your mouth. See, today I have appointed you over nations and over kingdoms, to uproot and to tear down, to destroy and to overthrow, to build and to plant. Moreover, the word of Adonai came to me, saying, What do you see, Jeremiah? I answered, I see an almond branch. Then Adonai said to me, You have seen correctly, for I am watching over my word to perform it. The word of Adonai came to me a second time, saying, What do you see? I replied, I see a boiling pot that is tilting away from the north. And Adonai said to me, From the north disaster will be poured out on all the inhabitants of the land. Behold, I am calling all the families of the kingdoms of the north. It is a declaration of Adonai. So they will come, and each will set up his throne at the entry of the gates of Jerusalem, against all their surrounding walls, and against all the cities of Judah. I will pronounce my judgments on them. For all their wickedness they have forsaken me, offering incense to other gods, worshipping the works of their hands. Now you gird up your loins, get up, and tell them everything that I order you. Do not be terrified by them, or else I will terrify you before them. Look, today I have set you up as a fortified city, an iron pillar and bronze walls against the whole land, against the kings of Judah, its princes, against his Kohanim, and against the people of the land. Though they will fight against you, they will not win, for I am with you to deliver you. It is a declaration of Adonai. And the beginning part of chapter 2, Judah rebuked for her sins. Again, the word of Adonai came to me, saying, Go and cry in the ears of Jerusalem, saying, Thus says Adonai, I remember the devotion of your youth, your love as a bride, and the way you followed me in the wilderness, in a land not sown. Israel was kadosh to Adonai, the firstfruits of the harvest. All who devoured him were held guilty. Catastrophe overtook them. It is a declaration of Adonai. And that's the end of the Haftorah reading. And I'm going to recap here um, again. In our Torah portion, Aaron's grandson, Phinehas, or they call him Pinchas, which is Pinchas, is rewarded for his act of zealotry in killing the Simeonite prince Zimri and the Midianite princess who he had brought into the camp after God said no to this. God grants him a covenant of peace and the priesthood. The census of 601,730 men between the ages of 20 and 60 were counted in the tribes of Israel, and the 12 tribes. Moses is instructed, well, actually, in the 11 tribes, because the Levites were actually the Levites were counted in this. On how the land is to be divided by lottery, the Levites, I'm backtracking here, the Levites were counted later, but they were not counted in the 601,730. That was uh, the the 11 tribes that were counted. Getting tongue-tied here. Um, Moses is instructed on how the land's to be divided by lots among the tribes and families of Israel. Now remember, the tribe of Levi was not to inherit the land. That was established a while ago. And now we talked about the five daughters of Zelophehad um, petition Moses, and they are granted the portion of the land that belonged to their father, because he died without sons. And then there was a law of inheritance that was established. Moses empowers Joshua to succeed him and lead the people into the promised land. And we talked about the seven feasts of God, Rosh Chodesh, Shabbat. That was all addressed here. So in the first Haftorah portion, we were talking about, we were actually in First Kings, and we saw Elijah the prophet, and how he showed the might of God to the people who had fallen into idolatry. And when they saw the might of God, they fell on their faces and proclaimed that Adonai indeed was God. Elijah then Ahab ran to Jezebel, told her everything that Elijah had done, because after this happened at Mount Carmel, he had the prophets of Baal actually slain, and so Jezebel was coming for him. So he got frightened, ran, went hiding in a cave, and was proclaiming to God that he was the only prophet left, that they were all taken away, and he might as well just take him too. And actually, when it was all said and done, God sent an angel and explained to him. Well, actually, he fed him, and then Adonai let let Elijah know that no, he was not the only one left. There was 7,000. There was a remnant that was spared, and to go and also uh, place his mantle on Elisha, which is what he went to do. And we have Jeremiah, the call of Jeremiah. Um, Here we're also addressing, Jeremiah was given the word of disaster coming upon the people. So if you look at what was happening here, um, at the end of last week's Torah portion, we saw what happened, and plagues were brought. Plagues were brought in because the people were intermingling and mixing with the people of the land, who were so mixed up in pagan worship and idolatry and all that kind of stuff. And here, in the first reading of the Haftorah, we see that is also addressed. Elijah shut up, actually prayed for no rain to come on the land. There was a famine and a drought, um, and this was actually the end of the drought when he had the showdown at Mount Carmel between the Baal prophets. It was definitely a showdown, and Adonai, of course, won, which he is the true and living God. So absolutely. And then again in Jeremiah, we see that the northern tribe had fallen to idolatry, and there was going to be disaster placed, that was going to come befall them. But also, Adonai was also addressing Judah and in Jerusalem. And we see how the call of Jeremiah came upon him. Um, Adonai touched the mouth of Jeremiah and put his words in his mouth. But the endearing words that Adonai said to Jeremiah at the beginning, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. So when we think about life and the formation of life, before he was formed in the womb, he knew him. So every aspect of life is so precious. So an unborn child is precious. Adonai is knitting that child in the womb, and he knows that child before that child is born, and he has a plan for that child. So we should, as believers, absolutely be pro-life because every life is precious in the sight of Adonai. He says to Jeremiah, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. And before you were born, I set you apart. So he had a plan already in place for Jeremiah. He has a plan in place for every single one of us. So make no mistake, every single life that is conceived at the point of conception, Adonai has a hand in. And that is a precious life, a precious creation of God, meant to be. And with that, we're going to do a closing prayer here. We're going to close out the first segment of Shabbat. We will come back and do our Brit Kadashah readings, and then we will also do an altar call, and we will do Holy Communion, and then close out this week's Shabbat service. Father God, thank you. Thank you so much for this powerful message of your creation of and what is holy to you, what you don't want your people to be doing and intermingling with. And we see the examples of this. We see the examples in the Torah, the Haftorah, and how they parallel. We also see in Jeremiah the sanctity of life and how precious it is. And we thank you for this message. We take it to heart, your word, because your word is holy and true, and it is powerful to us. We love you, Father God. We worship you. We adore you. We lift your name on high, for there is no one like you. No one like you. And we thank you for all that you have done. We thank you for this message. In the mighty name of Yeshua HaMashiach, Jesus Christ, Amen and Amen. Take a break and come back for the second segment. It will be actually starting at part 3.